sat on the gazebo steps. The bench is under a roof and even darker than the rest of the outside, so we just stayed on the steps. We were looking down the trail that follows the limestone wall.
Hey, hi, howdy, hello.
We each have a bright LED headlamp and a handheld flashlight. We don't usually look at each other when we night hike because the lights are so bright. We sat in a line like the Lord's Supper and walked in a line or staggered so we don't blind ourselves. It's after hours at this point. No ski lift rides had gone up for hours, and the rangers had already done their sweep and had left long before we got out of the car to head up.
Excuse you.
We left no time between them making sure the trail and top were clear before starting our hike up.
Excuse you.
The ski lift takes you up to the top, but there are workers that stay and do counts and only leave after it's clear. I guess I have to make these points because that's what I was thinking when seemingly out of nowhere, this girl with a headlamp begins to walk down the trail we're looking out at. She's in a sundress and flip-flops. This hike is uphill, and while it is a fairly easy hike, it is not easy without water or real shoes. She'd have to have hiked up and down to this point with no food or water. Her light was bright, and when she reached where the trail turns from in front of the gazebo to down where we came from, she stopped. She just stood there straight on, like how a human is presented in an anatomical drawing. She was looking directly at all of us sitting there, and her light made me bring my hand up to shield
Hey,
my
Kiwi.
eyes. She didn't turn away from our lights at all, and she didn't even seem bothered that she had 6 LED lights aimed right at her face. I said, "Hello?" She responded with a pause between every word, something like, "Hello, how are you?" I said something along the lines of, good. How are you?" She took even longer pauses than before and said, "Oh, I'm fine." She then just stood there, still with her hands to her side and facing and staring at us. Her light made it impossible to really see her face, and it was so bright I had my hand up the entire time, until she just turned and walked slowly down the trail where we had just come up. She got to a part where the trail turned, and we saw her light just stay in that one spot for a minute, until she turned and the light faded out of sight. We waited for a while before continuing up. I kept making comments about how weird that was, but everyone else just made it out to me always being afraid. But no one ever came after her. She had done this hike alone, at night, and somehow without being.
I'm coloring. I'm hoping it'll go better than my earlier stream because I don't know what's been up with my internet, but there's some I did in black and white. I did that with a pencil. Like the shade work and shit. I did it with a pencil. I'm sorry. I don't see anything in that one either. I gotta get another book. I like this one okay, but still not quite what I want. Hmm. I love kiwis. Soup and kiwis? Ew. Unless it's strawberry soup, that would taste like hell. No, thank you.
And started back up to the top. It felt like it took much longer than it ever had in the past, but we made it to the top. There are stone steps named Fat Man Squeeze that get you to the top of the ledge, and you can walk across it and whatever. Going up and being on the top, we could hear twigs snapping. We lay, but the clouds are even thicker now. It was miserably hot. We could hear voices at times, and my husband kept checking for people we heard. He never saw anyone. We saw a light flash, never saw anyone attached to it. But then we heard a bird call. But it wasn't like a real bird noise at all. It sounded like a person making the bird calls, like rhythmic and not really natural. I was convinced we were not alone, and had not been alone. But I was also the most easily spooked. I asked if we could leave as soon as they were ready to. They were ready right then and there, and that scared me, that they were just as afraid as me at that point. We began going down the way we came. It felt like it was taking so long. We were going steady and quick. It was downhill, but we were not making any ground, it seemed. It's hard to explain, but it was so weird that, at one point, I even said aloud, "This feels much longer." And they agreed with me. I kept looking behind me with the flashlight, and my husband kept looking out to the sides. My friend kept hers mostly forward. I kept feeling watched. I could not figure out what footsteps were ours, or if they were all ours that I heard. I would turn in the direction of any noise, but not see anything. When my husband was walking, he kept saying he was catching eyes in his flashlight. Usually, you can catch raccoon eyes spying on you, or something,
Hey,
or
hey. Don't you be catching raccoon eyes. What makes you think it's a raccoon? I think they're being specious. How do you know it was a raccoon? Hmm. How you did you fingerprint the raccoon? Hmm. They're just gonna willy nilly, blame raccoons.
large dog or something, and he never got his lights up
The
whatever
fuck?
eyes they were, long enough to see an animal size or shape. Now we're hiking down semi-flattish area.
I'm gonna put the ghost stories.
They say the world was once ruled by fear, not joy. Before Christmas became a time of celebration, it was a season of terror. Winter nights were longer, colder, and filled with the dread of monstrous creatures. Bipedal reindeer, with fur as black as the void, twisted antlers like thorns of hell, and eyes glowing red as embers. These were no ordinary reindeer. They didn't pull sleighs, they rode them, and their sleds weren't loaded with gifts of cheer, but with the tormented souls of the damned, cursed the reindeer through the skies, screaming into the
I'm gonna
frigid
play
night.
the other one real bit.
Every year, at the end of winter, the air would fill with the haunting sound of bells, signaling the arrival of their terrible gifts, not toys or candy, but death, fear, and despair. The village was gripped by unspeakable dread. Cursed presence appeared everywhere. There was the wooden mask, carved with an eerie precision, which once worn fused to its victim's face, trapping them forever behind its hollow stare. Another was the ominous countdown clock, its hands ticking backward. It would drain the very life from whoever held it, leaving only an empty shell behind. Each year these cursed artifacts would appear on doorsteps, bringing ruin to all who touched them. No one escaped their fate. That fateful night, my mother and I huddled together in our small wooden cabin, every light extinguished. The darkness felt like a blanket of safety, but we knew better. The reindeer didn't need light to find us. They could smell fear. And in our home, fear was thick. The bells came first, their chime low and ominous, cutting through the howling wind. Then the front door burst open, laughter followed, a high-pitched, maniacal sound that made my skin crawl. A small, tattered box waited on the doorstep, as if it had always been there. Its faded tag bore the words, "The Sinner Evelyn," my mother's name. I begged her not to touch it, but her hands shook as she reached for it, as if she were hypnotized. Inside was a threadbare doll. Its eyes, dull at first, flared a hellish red as its stitched mouth curled into a sinister grin. My mother's body seized violently. She fell, writhing on the floor, frothy foam bubbling from her lips as she mumbled in an unearthly tongue. Her only sin was raising me alone. Yet for that, she was condemned to a fate worse than death. Before I could scream, they came. The monstrous reindeer seized her, dragging her to their sleigh. She became another cursed soul bound to their infernal sleigh, leaving me alone with the cold and the fear. Desperate and enraged, I grabbed the nearest thing, pine cones scattered near the hearth, and hurled them at the creatures. To my shock, the reindeer shrieked, their movements becoming erratic. They scratched at their fur as if trying to rid themselves of some unseen torment. One by one, they stumbled.
I thought he said threadbare thong. So at least I know I'm not the only one here with my mind in the gutter, because I could have swore he said thong. The thong, the thong, thong, thong. I was like, well, that's kind of kinky. They bust up in the house wearing threadbare thongs. Then my mind went down a rabbit hole and started to wonder what the hell a threadbare thong would look like. and why the mother was so terrified upon seeing a threadbare thong. And, if giant reindeer from hell are wearing thongs, those motherfuckers gotta be packing, And it's probably more like a Speedo than a thong, because, deer be packing, and it was probably more like a Speedo. Right? Banana hammock. We're sitting here listening to stories about reindeer from hell dragging somebody's mama to hell, and all we're thinking about is whether or not they were wearing thongs or Speedos. We got issues.
Treated into the night, their howls of pain echoing through the frozen air. It wasn't until later that I realized what had happened. Pine. Monsters were allergic to it. The scent, the texture, it weakened them. And so, I began to prepare. For an entire year, I worked tirelessly. My family had always been woodworkers, and I knew the forest well. I harvested pine, crafting weapons and traps. I forged a plan, waiting for the next winter, the next chance to avenge my mother and end the reign of these beasts. When the time came, I stood at the edge of the pine forest, a wooden sword in hand and a sack full of pine cones slung over my shoulder. I called out to them, taunting them, daring them to face me. They came, as I knew they would. The bells tolled, the sky darkened, and the ground shook beneath their heavy steps. The lead reindeer, its antlers larger and more twisted than the rest, bared its jagged teeth and charged. I ran, leading them deep into the forest where the air was thick with the scent of pine. I ducked behind a large tree, holding my breath as the creatures slipped, their heads swinging wildly, unable to find me. From the shadows, I struck. With a single thrust of my wooden sword, I jabbed it straight into the mouth of the lead reindeer. Its body collapsed, its death cry piercing the night. The others hesitated, disoriented and vulnerable.
Okay, listen, hear me out. I'm gonna go somewhere bad with this. He said he threw his sack over his shoulders and shoved his hard wooden sword down this Wendigo's throat. This is not a scary story. This is for Furry Prawn. We're listening to Furry Prawn, because he just said he threw his sack over his shoulders and shoved his wood down a Wendigo's throat. And he started choking on it. Right?
I hurled pine cones at them, watching as they thrashed and stumbled, their strength waning. One by one, they fell. When the dawn broke, I emerged from the forest victorious. I had captured the surviving reindeer, binding them with ropes infused with pine resin. They would no longer bring death and despair to my village. Instead, I repurposed their sleigh. I filled it with gifts, dolls, sweets, and books I had crafted over the year, and rode through the village, delivering them to the homes of those who had lived righteously. I urged the people to embrace kindness and generosity, for these virtues were invisible to the reindeer. And so, Christmas was born, not as a time of fear, but of joy and giving. Each year I return with my sleigh, pulled by the subdued reindeer, their savage instincts kept in check by the scent of pine that lingers on my sleigh's reins. But I remind everyone, the reindeer is still out there, lurking, waiting for the chance to escape. And so we light our homes with warmth and kindness, and we hang pine wreaths on our doors to keep the darkness at bay. This is the tale of how I, once a terrified boy named Nick, became a legend. Sarah stepped into the room, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Her eyes were lined with deep black makeup, and her lips glistened a deep crimson. Tonight she wasn't just Sarah, she was a vampire. The costume was simple, yet breathtaking. "Wow, you look amazing," I said, smiling. I set the knife down as I finished cutting the steaks for dinner, but I accidentally nicked my finger. A small line of blood oozed from the cut. Before I could react, Sarah was suddenly right next to me, her hand softly holding my wrist.
Let me see.
She leaned in, her lips hovering just over the cut. I felt a little strange. Slowly, she brushed her lips against my skin, and then, gently, she licked the blood away. Sarah pulled back, her eyes narrowing. She stared at me for a moment before shaking her head.
Oh, negative?
She muttered under her breath.
You're not my type.
"What did you say?" Sarah smiled, wiping her mouth.
Don't worry about it. Let's eat.
Her tone was light, but something about the way she said it sent a shiver through me. I let it go, unsure if it was just part of the Halloween act. Later that evening, we headed to my friend Mark's Halloween party. The house was buzzing with energy. People in elaborate costumes, loud music, the smell of alcohol thick in the air. I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. Maybe it was the way Sarah had been acting, or maybe it was how she immediately gravitated toward the men in the room. She wasn't shy, but tonight, it felt different. She chatted easily with a group of guys, one after another. I watched Sarah as she leaned in close to them, her fingers brushing lightly against their arm, her lips close to their neck as if whispering something. Jealousy gnawed at my insides. She never acted like this around other men. I didn't want to be the possessive boyfriend and ruin the night with my insecurities. But my eyes kept drifting back to Sarah and the boys. Eventually, I slumped into a chair beside her and the man with blonde hair. She barely acknowledged me, her attention completely fixed on the blonde. His laugh grated on my nerves, and I could feel the alcohol muddling my thoughts, dulling my senses. I took another drink, then another, and before I knew it, the world around me blurred. When I woke up, the room was spinning. My head pounded, my mouth dry. I blinked groggily, trying to remember where I was. The party had died down. Most people were gone, the lights dimmed, but something was wrong. Broken glass crunched under my feet as I stood up. A bottle of wine lay shattered on the floor. I stepped closer, but my stomach churned. It wasn't wine. The dark red was thicker, more vivid. Blood. Panic surged through me, and I rushed to the bathroom to steady myself. I nearly vomited when I saw him. The blonde guy, crumpled in the corner, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. 2 deep puncture wounds marred his throat. Blood smeared down his chest. I stumbled back, heart pounding wildly. Sarah. To find her. We had to get out of here. I searched the house, weaving through the aftermath of the party, but she was nowhere. My thoughts were racing. What had happened? Who did this? Finally, I spotted her. Through the sliding glass door, I saw Sarah walking arm in arm with someone toward the garden, the moonlight casting their shadows long across the lawn. I stepped outside, following them, my feet moving on instinct. I hid behind the garden wall, my heart racing in my chest. Slowly, I peeked around the corner and froze. Sarah was with a handsome man, but something was wrong. His body was limp, his head lolled to one side. Sarah held him close, her lips pressed against his neck. And then I saw it. She was drinking his blood. I gasped, the sound escaping before I could stop it. Sarah's head snapped up, her mouth dripping with blood, her eyes wild. The blonde man's body slumped to the ground, lifeless, his neck a mess of torn flesh and muscle. Sarah saw me. Then, in a blur of motion, she was upon me. I ran, hard in my throat, but she was too fast. She tackled me to the ground, pinning me down with inhuman strength. I braced myself, sure that this was the end. I could feel her breath on my neck, smell the coppery scent of blood. "Please," I whimpered. "Don't." She paused, her face inches from mine, her fangs glinting in the moonlight. She looked down at my hand, still cut from earlier, dried blood on my skin. Slowly she smiled.
You don't need to be afraid. I told you before, you're not my type.
She wiped the blood from her mouth and with a slight laugh, added,
I mean your blood. Oh, negative. It's practically undrinkable.
I blinked up at her, too stunned to respond. She stood, offering me her hand as if nothing had happened. I hesitated, but took it, allowing her to pull me up. We walked back to the house, her arm looped through mine as if we were just any other couple leaving a party. But inside, my mind was spinning. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or disappointed. Sarah was a real vampire, and she dated me because my blood wasn't her type.
It might sound crazy, but if you asked me what the most important thing in my life is, I'd say it's bleach. Instead of perfume, I use bleach. It gives me the feeling of being completely clean. Looking at myself in the mirror, my skin glowing and...
Please tell me this crazy bitch isn't using bleach to clean her face. Like, bleach is not for the face. I feel like I shouldn't have to say that. But clearly I do. I don't know. It sounds more like they're making a porno than a horror story. It sounds like sexy time noises more than scary time noises. Just saying. It sounds like they're having sexy time. But yeah, I think I'm going to keep this one a shorter video for the coloring screen. I'm going to lay down. Come here. Yeah. You ready to go bed, Gandalf? Yeah. Come here. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah. Gandalf is ready to go to bed. He is. Good night, guys.